Whether you are the candidate or the one doing the hiring, all of us can relate to being in a job interview scenario. For many, it's a nerve-wracking situation with sweaty palms, ums and ahs, and the classic request of tell us about your weaknesses. Now, imagine that AI is in the interviewer's chair, assessing you for the job. Sounds even worse, right? Well, for AI-powered video hiring software Interviewer.AI, the introduction of AI stands to make improvements for both participants in this often stressful scenario. In today's episode of the Brains Byte Back podcast, we'll hear from Sunny Saurabh, co-founder and CEO of Interviewer.AI, to understand why he believes AI interviewing is the next step forward for hiring and how it looks to complement the current system of hiring with humans rather than outsourcing it entirely. We discuss how Interviewer.AI works and how it looks to advance scalability, objectivity, and speed in the hiring process. Sunny breaks down how the software screens your resumes and scores them, does a skills assessment test, and conducts pre-screen video interviews before you even meet the first candidate. With this in mind, Sunny explains how the first level of candidates are screened using the software so you can deal with the top level candidates out of hundreds of applications. Now, if you like this episode, please leave us a review on iTunes, and some other Brains Byte Back episodes just like this that you can check out are software that predicts employee burnout through language, neuroplasticity, why learning shouldn't always be a linear process, and the science behind learning soft skills and hard skills with the neuroscience specialist Todd Maddox. But now, on with today's episode. My name's Sam Breakgear, and you're listening to Brains Byte Back, your podcast exploring the intersection between psychology and technology. Disclosure: this episode contains a client of an Espacio portfolio company.
So I'm Sunny. I'm a second-time founder with over a decade of working with technology companies like Google and LinkedIn in Asia, when they just started out in Asia. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Interviewer.AI, an AI-powered video hiring software, which saves you a ton of time and money while hiring the top deserving candidates from anywhere across the world. We now have over 500 customers, including businesses, staffing agencies, and universities around the world across time zones. So it's a pretty exciting time to be in. What sets Interviewer.ai apart is that it's an all-in-one recruitment software that can screen your resumes and score them, do skill assessment tests, and pre-screen video interviews, even before you have met the first candidate. So it just provides you data-driven insights to help you just invest your quality time.
Yeah, I had a look on your website and I was really impressed because, like you said, the data-driven insights are really insightful, it seems. And I would really love to kick off by starting with a better understanding of how Interviewer.ai works. And I can, like I mentioned, I can see on your website that the AI rates the candidates on key success factors such as sociability, professionalism, energy levels, and communication. Now, can you explain how each of these factors are assessed, please?
Sure, Sam. So historically, any application tracking system that you find anywhere around the world, they start with resumes. And then from, say, X number of resumes, let's say 100, they shortlist 3 to 5 candidates for an interview. Now, what you miss out in that whole sifting process is the nonverbal cues. So you're a student of psychology. You understand verbal and nonverbal cues, right?
Yeah.
During an interview.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so there's this rule by Albert Mehrabian, which is called the 738-55 rule, which means that in any, say, two-way communication, 7% of meaning is communicated through the spoken word, 38% is through tone of voice, and 55% is through body language. So these things are totally missed when you're doing your resume screening and trying to arrive at the best candidates for an interview. And that's probably one of the reasons why people take 2 months to fill a role. What we do is we have an explainable AI approach where we assess these skills. And what we do is we look at things like the pace, clarity of communication. We look at whether somebody is collaborative, Um, so if you're using a lot of I did this, I did that, which means you're less of a team player than when you say we and as a team, etc. So these are some of the cues that you can gather by just recording a response, recording the video as to how you express, and your words. So yeah, and then what we do is we just stack rank all the candidates, not just on the video, audio, and what you've spoken, but also how does your resume stack rank against the job description? Do you have the right skills for that job? We do have something called a work map assessment where we just map what the work requires, and do you have the skills for it or not? Yeah, so that's how we do it.
That's awesome. I think that I love the fact that you broke that down into the percentages, because in my mind, I was thinking like, yeah, we interpret all of this. And for humans, I feel like it comes up, or it shows itself in our minds, or our psychology is like a gut feeling. We can't always put
Mhm.
our finger on where we get something from or why we feel a certain way about something, but we interpret all these things through body language, like you said, through tone of voice, perhaps through the words they
Mhm.
say, and it gives us an overall gut feeling. But it sounds like what you're doing is almost taking that process of developing a gut feeling and putting it into data where you can see like, oh, like this person's good for this, or I get this impression from them because of this, and you can almost like dissect why they're giving you this sensation or this feeling.
Absolutely. And when we talk about a gut feeling, we're talking about the gut feeling of one. When you look at a system like Interviewer.AI, where you have, say, 1,000 hiring managers, you take all of that data, look at how many people were shortlisted, what are the patterns you can discover for different roles across geographies, and you've just taken data-driven insights of, say, 100 hiring managers, the power of 100 against one's gut feeling, and just make better decisions. Uh, better hiring decisions. That's what we're doing with this.
Yeah, that reminds me of a quote which I really like, and it was brought up before on this podcast. I first heard it on this podcast, and I can't remember exactly how it goes, but
Mhm.
it says something along the lines of like, some people have their opinion, or everyone has their opinion, and we have data. And
Mhm.
as much as like I think obviously people's opinions are important, I think as someone that really likes like I suppose objective information or objective analyses, and I'm pretty sure you're probably the same. I really like that,
Yeah.
the fact that data can provide that, and like you said, it's not one person you're relying on; it's something much larger than that.
Sure. So if I just to name three, they are scalability, objectivity, and speed. So with scalability, you're able to interview every single candidate, and we cannot take this phrase lightly because companies like, say, Google, Facebook, LinkedIn, Amazon, they get millions and millions of applicants each year. Um, there's no way you can interview every single application by deploying human recruiters and hiring managers, right? So how do you interview everyone? You have to use technology. So that's the scalability that we bring in as a platform. The second is objectivity. Now, there is ample research to prove that resume alone is not a great predictor of future job performance. And mostly because you rely, when you look at a resume, you're relying on two things: your past experience and academic qualifications. And both have both have been proven on research after research to be poor predictors of future job performance. What has been better predictors of job performance are general mental ability, structured interviews, which companies like Google and LinkedIn have been doing it for ages, like for 10 years. It's now with tools like ours, tools like Interviewer.AI, that you can bring that objectivity across companies of different sizes. And lastly, speed. I mean, if I'm running a business and I have to hire 3 people across the US, Europe, um, I do not have the time to go through 50 applicants. You put a one job on LinkedIn, you have something called Easy Apply now. You get hundreds and hundreds of applications. Who's got the time to go through it? So how do you stack rank them basis the skills you want? And if you decide later that your requirements change and you change your skills, can the stack rank change? So that's basically, the beauty of a platform like ours. And I think it's going to be the future of recruitment.
Yeah, it definitely seems necessary, especially when you have so many people applying for one job. And in the face of the pandemic, I know things are more or less like making a recovery, but I know that like jobs were difficult to come by. A lot of people lost their jobs. A lot of people were applying for jobs and new jobs. So I like when you do have one job and you've got hundreds of people or potentially even thousands applying, you're absolutely right. It's just not feasible by human standards to just go through and sift all of them realistically without risking like missing someone that's perfect for the job.
Mm-hmm.
I also
Mm-hmm.
say like one thing I've noticed, I've never actually hired anyone. Maybe it'll happen. I've never really been in a position where I've wanted to or needed to. However, one thing that I do know from having superiors that do hire people frequently, it does seem to be one of the most stressful parts of their job. So I think having the ability to outsource that or at least make it more efficient sounds like it would do wonders for many people in many positions across a lot of companies.
Absolutely,
Mhm.
absolutely. So in Singapore, I was working at LinkedIn and I had to hire for Hong Kong and Australia. I was hiring for my team, a solutions consultant role, and both locations are so different culturally. And I'm sitting here in Singapore. How do I make that judgment based on a few resumes? So it's really, really hard. It's really tough, and that's why I thought we'd create Interviewer.AI.
Awesome. Well, my next question, like it more focuses on, I suppose, a drawback, which I'd really like to get your thoughts on, because we know that AI inherits the biases of humans. So how can AI objectively rate candidates without picking up these biases?
Yeah, so this has been something that we've been concerned with day one, and I don't know how much you follow the HR tech space, but there are so many different algorithms that predict um, top hires. But we have to accept the fact that hiring by nature is subjective. Um, you being in a hiring manager's position versus me or five other people would choose different candidates from the same pool of applicants, because you would have a different understanding of your team's requirements, what you need in your team versus me or somebody else. So it is subjective, and we have to understand there's no silver bullet where you can just say, all right, here's the system and here's the number one candidate, hire this person. So how do you take away that bias, right? So what we do is we have realized that recruiters do not completely understand the hiring manager's needs. So why don't we rely more on the hiring manager's data as to who they shortlist, who they hire, and what happens in 6 months? Do they still rate them as a good performer? Do they still retain them after a year, 2 years? So this process is going to take a few years for us, but when you rely on the hiring manager's data, they are performers. That's not somebody who impressed during an interview or impressed the recruiter or came through a connection or a referral. It's somebody who's doing a job. And so we need to get that rating right. And we want to collect this across hiring managers, across the world, across job functions, across industries. And it might take us 5 years to get to do this scalably across all roles globally, right? But I think we'll get there. So I think that the answer to this question is like you have to take it from an explainable AI approach rather than a black box AI approach, as to just let the system do the calculations. Let's just trust the algorithm. I don't think that will work ever.
Hopefully you're enjoying the show, and if you are, make sure you subscribe and never miss an episode. You can find us on all your usual podcast sites: Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Podcast Addict, and a whole lot more, including YouTube. And we want to hear what you think, so be sure to leave us a review. Just search Brains Byte Back wherever you get your podcasts. I like what you said when you mentioned about obviously looking back to see which candidates did well and then where they were later in 6 or however so months ahead or in the future. I mean, there's a saying, and I don't always like it that much because it's very deterministic, but I think it is true. And it certainly has a strong element of truth where they say the past is the best predictor of the future. And I think that when it comes to collecting data, that definitely has to be an important factor to consider. Yeah.
Yeah, and you know what? You'll notice that if you were a top performer in a similar role, like a sales manager, for example, and we hire you based on that, you might not really do well simply because you've been there, done that. It's not exciting to you anymore. You might want to take up a new challenge, but your behavior, that's what we kind of assess during the assessment exercise. It's like, are you a go-getter? Are you ambitious? Are you really passionate about something that you are looking for? These things are determined during an interview, and I think we do a decent enough job to do a pre-screen interview before you even invest your time. So I think there's something there that today it doesn't exist in the recruitment process. And I think we need to make it the default way of hiring in the near future.
I can understand the importance of that. Yeah, for sure. Now, on a similar note, like, do you see any other drawbacks to using AI for hiring, and how can these issues potentially be remedied, would you say?
So there are a few examples in the past. I know if your listeners do follow what happened at, say, Amazon, where they had to just shut down a system because it was kind of working against female candidates. Just because you enter data where 80% of the top performers at Amazon were male, the system said, okay, gender is not important. So you have an unfair behavior when you look at artificial intelligence and machine learning systems. There's another company called HireVue that does video interviews, and they're going to shut down their system in the US as early as December of this year, simply because, again, they went through an audit and it was not fair to the colored population. So we need to ensure that we take global data sets, and we need to ensure that it's trained to be unbiased towards age, gender, or skin color.
I completely agree. There's definitely an issue with what you said with Amazon, and it's kind of like just looking at data alone. But I suppose that's where the human touch comes in, right? That's where someone has to, like, a human has to come in and see what's going on, because correct me if I'm wrong, but AI won't be able to correct that or notice it itself, would it?
Absolutely. So that's where the AI that we use is called Explainable AI, which refers to a term where human beings are able to easily comprehend through dynamically generated graphs or just textual descriptions the path the artificial intelligence technology took to make a decision. So it's explainable in the sense that you can go to a path as to how did you arrive at this decision. And we are very open to feedback, where sometimes, a hiring manager or a business has made the call of hiring somebody that was, say, number 10 or number 11 in the list. And we are like, hey, give us some feedback. Why didn't you take the number 1, number 2, number 3, and all these? And they would bring an insight that which we had not thought, and I don't think any AI can solve for. So, for example, there's some customer of ours who is in the gaming industry. They had a customer success person in Latin America, and this person had worked for IBM for 10 years. But he was also a guitarist, so he had the creative side as well, and they loved it about him, and they hired him. And it's like, no AI can say that, all right, yeah, you have the skill sets, but you also are creative, so we should give you bonus points. It doesn't work that way, right? But they loved that the platform was able to give them all the attributes of different people, and they were able to choose who would they spend time for face-to-face interviews. So the technology can only do this much, and what we are proposing with our system is just the top of the funnel first level screening. So you know who to spend your time with, the 5 to 6 candidates that you should spend the time with. It's not making a hiring decision for you. It's just taking away the repetitive time consuming or the boring tasks, so to say.
Yeah, I think that's a reoccurring theme that we find whenever we have a topic related to AI, regardless of what sense it's being used in. It should never really be left alone completely. There always seems to be the best or most optimum results whenever AI is merged with humans in a way so that it works as a tool to collaborate and assist. And much like you said, it does all the dirty work of trying to sift through all those candidates to start with, and then obviously the human element can come in and add the necessary parts that come with that. Now, I did actually see on your website that you have an option for candidates specifically. So correct me if I'm wrong, but does this mean Interviewer.AI software can be used for candidates to practice for interviews and receive feedback?
Absolutely. So I think we are one of the only platforms out there that transparently shares the AI assessment feedback directly with the candidates after the interview. And I think that's the future. So we don't talk about it much because we are focused on the B2B side of our business. But going forward, what we want to be able to do is for a candidate who has applied for a role within a company, we want to tell them not only why they were shortlisted and why they weren't shortlisted, but what is the feedback? How could they have performed better? Because globally, you chat with any company. In the UK, it's even tougher to give feedback. Recruiters don't want to give feedback because they can be sued in the courts. So people do not give feedback to candidates. And I've seen, like, I was talking to a business this morning, 300 candidates, they selected 4 for interviews. And I'm like, how many candidates did you give feedback? It's like not even the 4. They just chose the number 1 and they just hired him. And they just put it in the system as or the reasons why they hired him. So just 1 feedback out of 300. I think that's very unfair to every candidate. And that's why we do this. We transparently share how do they compare with other applicants during the job. But more importantly, if they are not shortlisted, what are the other 3 or 4 jobs where we can guarantee a face-to-face interview? We cannot guarantee them a job because it has other factors like salary, whether you're interested in that role, and other things, whether you're interested to move into that location, etc. Right? It's a very, very personal preference and choice. But what we can do is we can help them find jobs based on just one application that they did for some other company, and they didn't make it. So it's going to get more and more candidate centric as a platform in future.
That's good because, yeah, I think whenever you want to improve in anything, regardless of what it is, you of course need feedback, because otherwise you're just stuck in a constant cycle of making the same mistakes until you realize that you're making them. But I mean, there's no point reinventing the wheel. It's far better to have someone to tell you you're making them. And clearly, yeah, like this offers a tool for that. So that's great news. And I want to move a little bit away from your company and what you do specifically and ask you a more like general question. And I'd love to hear your thoughts on like where you see recruitment in 10 years' time.
Wow. Yeah, so that's really exciting. I think I would like to start with that we are living in the future now. Just yesterday on our team meeting, on our weekly team meeting, I realized that 80% of my staff, I've never met them in person. So this is going to be the future. Remote working is going to be the future. Today, roughly 6% of jobs globally are remote, but that would grow by 10x. Maybe it would be 60% would be remote jobs, and only 40% you would be on premise. So that's, I see that change, and we are living in that future right now. The other prediction I think I can safely make is that 9 to 5 jobs will be replaced by flexible working hours. And workplaces, the way what we call offices, will become meeting places. You just go there to block some time to collaborate, to brainstorm, to do your quarterly business strategies and reviews. But it won't be somewhere where you hop on a I don't know what you call it there, but MRT is here, metro or a train or a shuttle, and you're going every day to the same rut. I know that the traffic from San Francisco to Mountain View is crazy busy. Like it can take you 2 hours to just reach the Google office. So all of that is just going to go away. I don't think it's going to exist in 10 years. And lastly, we will be completely moving to a skill-based digital economy. So university degrees, I don't think will make sense in 10 years. It will be more about certifications that you get online or any courses that you want to take. And you will be entering something called a lifelong learning era. So it's not going to be, your education is not going to end at 21 years. I mean, some people might not like it. They would love for college and studies to end, but I think it will keep people younger, because the more you exercise your brain and you work continuously to improve and learn and use your creative juices, I think you stay younger and live longer. That's just exciting.
Yeah, I think you're right. Keeping your brain active and awake is definitely a fantastic way of living longer and mentally just staying younger. And as well, I think that I definitely seen that. That's one of the things that I've noticed from my own perspective in the past 10 years. So I started university 10 years ago exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say that at that time I had the mentality of like, oh, the process is you go to university, you graduate, and then you get a job. Whereas now I think I would advise like any of my younger siblings or anyone that's young listening to this and contemplating whether or not to go to university, I would just say to them, like, do you really need it? Because there's not only the fact that you could just spend that time directly going into a job and learning elsewhere. There's also the other things that come with it, like the debt as well. So to be able to like have after 3 years of experience and be paid for that versus 3 years of education and be heavily in debt, it doesn't make sense as much anymore. So I think you're definitely right on that. And with regards to being more remote and also flexible hours, I mean, I'm 100% on board. I think we've seen the pandemic put that on like steroids, that growth or that shift.
Mm-hmm.
And I fully support it. I've got more time to be at home with my girlfriend and my cat, so I'm fully on board.
That's awesome. You're living the dream, actually. You're living the future right now.
It's pretty good, not gonna lie. Yeah, I'm happy. But I did have one last question for you, and that is, if any of our listeners find themselves in a situation where they are being interviewed for a job by Interviewer.AI software, and what advice do you have for them, Sunny?
Sure, Sam. So, I mean, we work with the top universities here in Singapore to train students, final year grads, for exactly the same thing with mock interviews. So, I would say that you need to understand your physical and technical environments. The people who get really confused with a one-way interview where you're just recording your video response, there's nobody at the other end to give you feedback and really drive that energy. So you have to be confident. You have to ensure there's no background noise. Your sound systems work properly. Your camera is not hazy. You have a good camera. Those kind of things. Very, very simple technical details. And then you need to structure your response to the time limit because most companies put you on say a 1 minute to a 3 minute time slot where you're able to respond. So you need to ensure that you say your points quickly and very, very, in a structured way. But just not focus on what you say, right? Your tone of voice and your body language should also come out strongly. The way you are trying to deliver the message. So those kind of things, and There's nothing to be scared about, but I think today you should also be very picky about the roles you want to pursue, because the life has changed dramatically after the pandemic, and during the pandemic is still going on. It's a talent-driven market right now. So in Singapore, there are 163 jobs for every 100 candidates. And in the US, I've seen that there are 1 million more jobs than there are candidates, largely in, say, restaurants and nursing and those areas, but still there are jobs. So you need to be very, very careful about the career choice you make in the next, for your next 2 to 3 years, because with remote working, there's no work-life balance. You need to get into this work-life harmony, just like Sam just spoke about, right? So you're living it. I believe every person who's looking for employment should understand that this has to be your life, so that harmony is very important in how you pursue your next 3 to 5 years.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that those workplaces that value that, which kind of like have that firmly cemented into their culture, like for example, like we don't send emails or we don't communicate about work related topics past like 6 p.m. or before 8 p.m. like 8 a.m. I think those ones would really have an advantage, because you're right, we can now work anywhere at any time, and there's that risk of constantly feeling like you have to be on, you have to be online, you have to be alert and ready to respond. But that's not going to foster the best mental health or the best work ethic, I think. So yeah, I think harmony is the perfect word you used there to sum that up.
Yeah, it's exciting. We were speaking with some of the recruiters, and they end up a lot of our recruiter clients end up to be women who have kids and a dog and a husband at home, and it's very hard for them to work during the 9 to 6 hours, right? There's so much distraction to just do 10 interview calls, and they love our software because once they've taken care of everything, they're at peace of mind. At 11 p.m. at night, they can look and scan through the candidates and just pass on to the hiring managers. So it's just how you're productive and how you manage your time. It's going to be super crucial and important in the near future.
Yeah, I suppose on reflection, my example wasn't that good, since it was a classic 9 to 5 kind of example. But I think you nailed it with the ability to almost like dictate your own time or your own schedule and put it into hours that fit and work for you. Because I mean, yeah, I have coworkers that I work with, and they have that exact situation where they've got to go pick up the kids, or they've got to do certain family stuff, and they factor in their schedule around that, and you just make it work, and it does work better for everyone in that way.
Yeah, exactly. So it works for your requirements. It works for people who have other responsibilities. It's just a new way of working, and I think it's there to stay.
Yeah, 100%. Now, Sunny, we've come to the end of our show, but I really want to know if people want to speak to you or reach out to you, follow you, or keep up with the work that you folks are doing at Interviewer.AI. How can they do that?
You can just, Interviewer.AI is our website. Feel free to reach out to us. I'm also available on LinkedIn and Twitter. Or feel free to write to me at sunny@interviewer.ai, and we'd be happy to see how we can help. Yeah, and the beauty about where we live today is this conversation that we are having, and pretty much anything wasn't possible 10 years ago. So people are working across the world together, and I think it's a fantastic time to be alive. So if we can help in any way, we can collaborate, help you out, things like that, please feel free to reach out to me, and then we'll see how to take this forward with.
Sounds good. Thank you for today's conversation, Sunny.
Thanks, Sam. It was delightful to have this conversation with you, and yeah, hopefully we can do this again sometime.
Sounds good. Growing a company has many hurdles, from securing funding to expanding your business capabilities to ranking better on search. Each business challenge is uniquely complex. The solution to these challenges is growth-focused digital PR and marketing, and that's where our sponsor Publicize comes in. Publicize sets itself apart from traditional PR companies. It does not charge large retainers or churns out press releases whether you've got a newsworthy announcement or not. Publicize builds on your business's online presence and gets high quality PR and media coverage for startups and entrepreneurs who are priced out of a broken PR industry. And for a limited time only, exclusive to Brains Byte Back listeners, you can receive a social media assessment as part of your package for any tier of service at no extra charge with this special promotion. To find out more, visit publicize.co/BBB. That's publicize.co/BBB. This is the end of today's show. Thank you so much for listening. If you like this and you want to hear more episodes just like it, then follow and subscribe to Brains Byte Back wherever you get your podcasts. We're also available on YouTube under the channel of our publication, The Sociable. Just search Brains Byte Back and you'll find all of our episodes there. We really love hearing what you have to say, so leave us a review on iTunes or on any other podcasting platform to let us know what you think. You can also reach out on Twitter at The Sociable. And finally, go to sociable.co where you can find all our episodes and plenty of articles on topics just like this. Thanks again for joining us, and until next time, stay safe and stay healthy.